Welcome, Matt, to our Leaders Who Care series. It's really great to have you here.
Likewise, thanks so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Well, shout out to our strategic partner, Prophets of AI, and Matthew for introducing us. And we're excited about highlighting you, of course, but also all the other prophets of AI, and really showing that the work you're doing in highlighting, AI for good in a number of areas is really important to us and important to you guys. So we're really happy to be able to show you are really leaders who care. So don't disprove me during this interview, okay?
Okay.
I'm sure you won't. Let's start with like briefly introducing yourself. And I have to tell this to the guys more than the gals. Not the business side yet or the company side yet. Who's Matt? Family, where are you from originally? Where are you now? If you want to tell us your favorite color, go ahead. And if you want to tell us something you've never told anybody, and now is the time you want to reveal it, we'll take that too.
Okay, well that's a lot of all in one question. But so again, my name is Matt Lewis. I'm really thrilled to be here. Hello to the audience, wherever, whenever you're listening and watching this. My story is really kind of I think it's interesting, but again, I'm me, so that is what it is. But um, I've been a lifelong New Yorker. We were just chatting about this before the talk began. I've lived in New York my whole life, but I traveled extensively professionally in a number of different roles. I've traveled throughout Europe and the US and other places. And I really just enjoy working with other people and learning from people in different places and learning how to kind of progress the way that they work and the way they live so that they can improve their health. And that's really kind of all I've done. I grew up in Long Island, New York, about an hour east of New York City. I went to undergrad in upstate New York, about 4 hours north of New York City. I did my master's degree in New York City itself. I started doing a doctoral degree in health education and adult learning in New York City, also at Columbia University. I didn't finish that. I did everything but my dissertation. I try to get out of New York, especially when it's cold and snowy like it is today here. But I always find my way back.
Well, you said you found your way back, but your wife was a factor in that.
Yeah, well, we a family here? All our friends are here. Our whole life is here. And it's if I could kind of teleport everything that's here to a sunnier climate, like maybe Miami or San Diego or somewhere else, I would certainly do that. But unfortunately, there's no AI for that as of yet. So I'm stuck. I'm stuck in Westchester County, New York, for the moment with my wife and two daughters, and we have a Cavapoo dog as well. And so it's a good life, but
Yeah.
it is a cold one at times, like it is today. So
Well, I can relate to that because I grew up in Montreal a lot of my life, and then went to Winnipeg, why not go somewhere colder, and then I got recruited to come down to Miami, but it was when I was like 24, 25. So if it would have been when I was 30, I'd probably still be in Montreal because you get not stuck, but you get settled, right? Like then that's what you're talking about. So
yeah.
anytime you want to come to California and thaw out, just let me know. Well, we'll bring you over here. But what were you like? You were talking about two daughters. What were you
Yeah.
like as a kid and a teenager? Were you an explorer? Were you building computers? Were you playing an instrument? What did you do?
Yeah, I did a lot of things as a kid. Looking back as my childhood, it's it makes sense that I kind of went down this path. But my both my parents were public school teachers,
Hmm.
and they I think they really were really interested in teaching until they actually taught. And then and then all through my childhood, like if there was one refrain that I heard over and over again, it was do not become a teacher. And they told me, and I have two younger brothers that are also in related fields, that we could not become teachers. That if we became teachers, they would kind of disown us or they'd stop talking to us or some version of that. And I probably heard that phrase more than any other single phrase throughout my entire upbringing. It's actually somewhat ironic because I think the one kind of unifying force for my entire childhood and still to this day is that I just really have a real passion for learning. I just love learning in all its forms. I mean, when I was a kid, I played piano, I lifted weights, I
Wow.
swam, I did model rockets, I read fantasy and science fiction. I did, lots of things. I played, poker with my friends. I did lots of things that I enjoyed doing, that I like learning from.
Yeah.
But there wasn't really like a unifying kind of force. I acted in shows, I did musicals, I did creative things that, allowed me to kind of tell my story to people, if you will.
Mhm.
But the thing that was really consistent was I just really kept trying to kind of figure out what I enjoy doing, what I like kind of expressing to other people, and kind of how I could learn in ways that kind of help me kind of figure out how to contribute, I think. And I'm still doing that.
No, I would hope so. But that, it's interesting. My sons, when they were in high school, the principal of the high school had been I think, a pro baseball player. Um, and somehow they've got into dancing too. And he was teaching geometry and comparing it to sport and dancing. So everything we study and be curious on, you get some kind of derivations, you get where things come from. It's don't you find that? And that's maybe something that's been your success, and joy of learning so much, is they're all kind of connected in ways.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I was probably fortunate, honestly, that when I was a kid, that like the internet didn't exist, and that I didn't constantly chase those like little threads and have the need to kind of pull against them, that I could just like be really focused on what I was doing in the moment, and be really interested in that, and just that, if you will.
Yeah.
I was playing a role play game, or it was doing jazz improvisation. I could just be wholly focused on that consideration, which was challenging enough, and was fully engaging, without having to think, oh, like when I'm doing improvisation, is this gonna one day be related to molecular biology considerations of doing gene splicing, which I did in college, because it's all about problem
Wow.
solving and thinking about the codons and all the rest. Like I didn't think that way when I was 16, but now I do. But I think a lot of it is like the amplifying effects of digital technology, of being able to kind of make connections in ways that I hadn't been able to do with my kind of brain alone, if you will. But yeah, I think that there's so many kind of connections in life, and in things we do, that unless they're pointed out, or kind of make that casual kind of connection, you wouldn't realize that they exist. And it is quite helpful just to kind of think about that.
Yeah, I think it's actually valuable and important that younger people, and not only younger people, see that studying this is not totally a waste of time, because it relates to this and this and this. And so, talking about education, then, what made you, with all the things you've done, you could have maybe been a musician, maybe been a comic,
Mm.
maybe been whatever. How did you pick biology, health, education? What intrigued you that path?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. When I was a senior in high school, I actually applied both to music conservatory and to Cornell, where I went to undergrad for molecular and cellular biology. And my parents told me, they said, you can go wherever you want. We're not going to kind of bias your decision, but if you go to Cornell, we'll pay for it. And if you go to conservatory, you have to pay for it yourself. And I think it's an interesting kind of predicament, I guess you could say, because it's not like the resources didn't exist for them to potentially contribute to either path. But I think because being public school teachers, my mom, her best friend was a music teacher, and she had been a musician, and it's not the easiest lifestyle
Yeah.
if you're not wildly successful. And I think they were trying to kind of point out to me what challenges I might face if I went down that path. I was really interested in jazz theory, music theory, and I think there might be a couple hundred successful people in that path, but not nearly as many jobs in jazz music theory as there are in biology, if you will, writ large. So I did think long and hard, do I really want to take a loan out for this type of program and study this intensely and try to make it work? And then maybe I'll end up in this type of life where I'm kind of always hustling and trying to really I wasn't really talented. I just really practiced a lot and tried really hard, but I didn't have a unique kind of gift, if you will. And I ended up deciding, okay, I'll go the molecular and cellular biology route and kind of progressing. But the reason I went into even that side of things is that when I was a junior in high school, my paternal grandmother, died of breast cancer, and I was taking advanced placement biology at the time, and it really was like a life-changing moment for me, and it really kind of shifted my whole trajectory because I was like studying kind of the underlying biochemistry of kind of how cells mature and kind of what happens when they go wrong and become cancerous and the rest, and also at the same time kind of other aspects of disease and infectious disease and things like viruses and all the rest that now we're all too familiar with the pandemic and the rest. And I was just fascinated with kind of where science had progressed to. This was like in the mid 90s, and what was possible on the horizon to in that field. And I said, I'm going to go kind of contribute to medical research and infectious disease and kind of cellular research. And that's kind of what got me onto that path. And then I went to Cornell to study that exact thing. And I started doing research, and I detested working in a laboratory. I absolutely hated it. It was the most boring, excruciatingly painful thing I've ever done. Just waiting around for something to happen for hours and hours and hours, or even worse, like something would happen, but it would happen at like hardly inconvenient times. Like I'd do something in the afternoon or the late evening, and then I'd go home or to the cafeteria or whatnot, and then I'd have to go back to the lab at like 3:15 in the morning, or the reaction would be missed, and I'd have to separate everything out and be like, why am I doing this? Just to like eventually read one result that could contribute to a long series of considerations that will eventually make a difference somewhere else. And I couldn't like reconcile that in my brain. So ended up towards the end of sophomore year kind of figuring out that I really loved science. I loved appreciating, interpreting, and interrogating and kind of telling the story of science, but I
Mhm.
didn't really want to do science.
You
And
sound like your parents. They loved teaching, but not, they loved it, but didn't want to do, not after they taught.
maybe, yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I never thought about it that way.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating how there's inflections in our lifetime that turn us a certain way, obviously, and we get influenced. And what better way to be influenced? Not that your grandmother got sick, but because you wanted to do something good there because of that. Which kind of segues into, what I wanted to ask you here about. Our firm, we founded on the basis that leaders and the organizations can do way better economically when they're doing good at something at the same time. And it took a while for us to realize that in this world, but it can happen. Um, Kudos to you. I mean, you're recognized globally as an AI leader, as a visionary and futurist. With the fast-paced world that's going on right now, so many things going on. Um, you've worked at some really good companies, Procter, Boehringer, then Omnicom, now Inzio Medical. Aligned with what you said about where you're starting to find your passion, when and where did your passion and interest feel the strongest? And also where you saw that there could be a balance between making the money that we're talking about, but also making a social impact at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think it not everyone necessarily kind of discovers that or has the opportunity to contribute that way. I think for me, the first time was at Procter and Gamble, actually, probably back in maybe 2004 or five-ish or so. I was working in what was then the pharmaceuticals division of P&G. They later divested that to what is now AbbVie. But at the time, I was leading a group responsible for really research in osteoporosis. And the group that I was responsible for quickly realized that there were a number of different kind of recommendations and guidelines and considerations for doctors in the space to try to figure out who's at risk of fracturing, of having a hip fracture or something similar. And all the recommendations all said different things. If you looked at what one guideline said, look at people that are 55 and white. If you look at people that are 65 and older, if you look at people that had this risk factor, and if you're a primary care doctor and you only have 6 minutes to see a patient, it was impossible to figure out what to actually do. So we worked with a group of experts around the country to kind of convene a panel and determine what clinicians should really actually do in the space that was evidence-based or evidence-inspired, if you will, and practical. And I know this is going to make me sound really old, but now everyone has an iPhone or an Android phone. at the time, the thing that was really great was a Palm Pilot. If you
Sure.
remember Palm Pilot. So we built an app for Palm Pilot, and we validated it with the American Medical Association. And the AMA endorsed the app, and then we shared it out across the whole AMA, and it actually got congressional approval through the U.S. Bone and Joint Decade. So it in 30 seconds allowed for a PCP or an OBGYN, an internist, a family physician to determine whether or not their patient was at risk for osteoporosis, and then get them to a point of being diagnosed. And before that, either nothing happened or the wrong thing happened. So it was, good work to do to help the field, if you will, and it was, beneficial for the organization that could contribute directly to the space and in the products and services that we offered. So I thought it was a really, kind of testament to what's possible.
Sure.
And it was really just interesting, just, working with people who are so passionate about the space and almost kind of telling that scientific story, but through their eyes, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great story. A lot of times you hear about whether it's AI or engineering or whatnot, that you're in a big company and obviously you've got opportunity of resources and whatnot, but it's not necessarily always the entrepreneurial or the agility or whatever to really do something that you really might want to do. Did you have that, or did you have total still support to really blast away, or
Yeah,
depend?
we were like semi-autonomous. I mean, I think, at the time it was normal for us, but looking back on it now, I realize, how special it was because, in a large organization, I think P&G may have been 80,000 people at the time. To have that level of consideration and support, but it would, now would be unheard of. But, we had a tremendous amount of support and autonomy and resources. But I think we were also blessed that, I think, it's a lot easier to get people to do something when they believe in the cause and they believe they're helping people and helping humanity than when they're just getting a paycheck. And like we had a person that he was a family physician resident. He was a physician who just, was training towards this family physician credential. He was maybe 26 years old, and he was really passionate about this topic. It is similar to the story of my grandmother. He'd had someone in his family that had fallen and broken her hip, and he really wanted to improve the standard of care within this space. And he also knew how to develop computer code for the Palm Pilot, and he volunteered his time to contribute to this effort at both a space and a time and a cost that was far lower than, say, what we would do if we had to kind of farm it out to a third-party firm or develop it in-house. And we were able to iterate and to build prototypes and MVPs and stand up a solution significantly faster than what would have been done otherwise. And he was really doing it to help people, to help, other clinicians. And we could never have accomplished what we did without, his heroism and with his contributions. But really everyone I worked with was like that. They all were really, enthusiastic, passionate people that want to help others. And, there was a small consideration for their time, but most of it was that, was really just hoping to help.
Yeah, it's great to hear that because it doesn't always happen. You're right. It doesn't always happen for other, power or money or control or whatever scenarios that are going on, out there. And there's a new TV show I was watching called Lessons in Chemistry. Lessons in Chemistry, but it's about this lady who's really brilliant, but it was at a time when women weren't kind of like hidden faces.
Figures.
Yeah, figures, yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And even then they didn't have, the opportunity to show their stuff and whatnot, kind of what you're talking about. There's gonna be a little bit of a long question, but it'll make sense. Hope it makes sense. The fourth industrial revolution is about technology, effectively, AI, virtual, et cetera, et cetera. They say the fifth is about humanity. We do a lot of work where talent and impact have to come together, and they do better coming together. We have a pretty diverse audience also that we talk to. Some of them are AI savvy to the other end of the spectrum. Not dumb, but not AI savvy, if you will.
Yeah.
And leadership roles, and many just trying to keep up with everything going on, and going back to the fast moving technology. And sometimes that's a FOMO thing. Sometimes it's a scary thing. Sometimes it's everything.
Yeah.
How, with all your experiences, you worked in scientific exchange, you're leading artificial, and I noticed artificial and augmented intelligence. Can you share how that is critical and valuable to everyone? to, people in life sciences, different communities at large for better overall healthcare, better mental health, so on and so forth.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think you're completely right that the fourth industrial revolution is really kind of the realization of what technology is possible for, if you will. Although I'm still really waiting for both flying cars, which I was promised when I was a kid and still don't have them.
The
Just waiting
Jetsons.
for it. Yeah, exactly. And also, I would really benefit from some significant technological advancements in snow shoveling right now, which I don't know why it's
Oh,
the
you don't have
same.
a robot to do that?
No, why is it the same snow shoveling that it's been for the last 45 years of my life? Um,
Well, that's the best inventions are the ones that really solve problems.
but for the fifth industrial revolution and what's about to happen, I think it really is a cognitive revolution. It's an advancement and augmentation, if you will, of what's possible in the way we think and the mental domain of our kind of inner lives, our mental lives, and how we interact with others. And in order for that to really work and to work well, it requires humans to know themselves, to be able to self-assess and to kind of regulate their emotions, and to be mature enough to be able to interact with others that are doing the same thing. It's not like, in the third industrial revolution when you have like industrial machinery, or in the fourth when there's automation, and you can just kind of set these things off, in their own fashion. They run autonomously, and you don't need kind of a human to operate them or to kind of see how they run on their own. With what's coming, it requires empathic and considerate and expert people to really make it work well. And that it's not that those things don't happen by default. Like, if they're the classical example of what they call augmented intelligence, where AI is able to extend forward the capabilities of humans to be more thoughtful, to reach decisions faster, to make better choices, and to improve outcomes, comes actually from life sciences. The example is in the lymph node cancer space, where if you look at AI kind of trying to find challenges within lymph node kind of cancer cells, an AI system does a good job of that. It typically gets like a 92.5% efficacy. If you look at pathologists, they get a little bit better than that. If you combine the two, it's even better than either alone. That's like real synergy. But in order to get that synergy, you need expert humans, the pathologists, and you need AI systems that are responsible, not biased, safe, compliant, respecting privacy, and all the rest. If you have humans that just kind of like rolled out of bed, they're tired, they don't really care about what they're doing, they don't care about humanity, and then they work with AIs that are not well trained, you don't get that synergy. You get actually 1+1 = less than 2. So it really requires that consideration of both working together to do 1+1 = 3. And there's so much that goes into that, so many human factors, just in terms of how we relate to each other as people, and also what's going on in our heads, that is relevant to what's coming.
Yeah, that's super fascinating and actually brilliant. Based on one of the next points I'm going to raise, because we talk about leaders who care. There's always the expression of soft skills, which we kind of call now power skills, because they're not soft anymore. They're becoming really, really important, kind of what you're talking about. Maturity makes a lot of sense. And also being able to, part of what we do also is we find top talent for our clients who want to work with leaders who care. And that's not just a flippant remark. They want to work with leaders who really do care.
Sure.
And they, they find it's a unique skill that leaders who care have to engage in strategic partnerships, to truly care about the well-being of their people. And the well-being, it really relates, as we've seen, to the financial, physical, and mental well-being, the whole spectrum, because that can affect everything. And what are their individual goals? What are their team goals? How does that work? And one aspect, before I ask you the actual question of this, is, we're involved in the world right now that's full of conflict, up the wazoo, full of hate, full of everything. It doesn't take a genius to realize that's going to impact the maturity and God knows everything else you talked about going on. And one of our nonprofit clients has a program called Nonflict, which is a process of how to look at conflict differently. How do you see all that coming together? When maybe people are trying to be promoted over, Joe's trying to be promoted over Jane, or you remember the story about AIDS and with that movie, the story about AIDS and who invented it. They were arguing about who found it first, type of thing. That type of recognition. How do you find that's going to impact future scenarios and being able to move forward in a responsible, ethical, positive manner?
Yeah, I those are great questions, and this is like getting into the realm of like the kind of big questions that are like a little bit challenging to answer, because I think one, they're questions that really matter to us as people, and second, because I think there aren't a lot of true forums for people to really engage in discussions about these topics. There's a lot of social media, there's a lot of journalism, there's other exchanges, but not like a real kind of salon, if you will, to really kind of engage the way there was in the Renaissance. So it's hard to really explore this fully. But I think one of the people that I follow that is a kind of like an idol of mine, if you will, is Peter Diamandis. And if you're familiar with
I know
him,
Peter.
you know him personally. Okay, but he's someone I follow extensively, and I've followed for years. But I think his viewpoint, if you will, of having an abundance mindset is about to become relevant for humanity in many aspects of the enterprise, but also of intergovernmental and interpersonal considerations. Because for most of human history, and it affects a lot of things we do, people were kind of wired by default to have this like belief that nothing is really possible and that everything by default is scarce. Whether you're competing with Joe for a job, or whether you're fighting for territory in a disputed region, everything is considered that you're not going to have much ever, and that you have to fight tooth and nail to keep what's yours, because you're not going to get much as you mature forward. But as we progress in the AI renaissance that's coming, the opposite is actually true, where there's going to be more available to everyone than people can possibly imagine. And most people can't handle abundance. They can't really fathom what to do with the riches that are forthcoming. I don't mean financial riches, but the riches from a value perspective across the chain, across the continuum. And abundance in most large businesses and in governments is not really baked into our bureaucracy. It's not baked into our incentive systems, our processes, our systems. So when you have more than has been historically available, most people don't know how to deal with that. So, I think that's more of a challenge actually than the scarcity that we've dealt with for the last 10,000 years. And it's already going to be a real issue within the next year plus, as the generative AI wave continues to hit across the shores of most organizations. But if you don't have to tell Sally that she's competing with a job against Joe and Bill and Sam and Max, but actually that the 5 jobs that they had are now going to be 50 jobs, and we're going to figure out the competencies and the skills and the roles and the needs across that organization that's growing quite quickly. How are you going to fill 45 open spots? That's a bigger concern, but it is a real concern. It's coming.
Yeah, that's kind of like negative, but also super positive at the same time. That if we can open up our minds to the possibilities of that, then amazing stuff can happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's I read this book a long time ago, probably about a decade ago. It's called A Beautiful Constraint, and it kind of typifies the scarcity mindset writ large. So like if you only believe that scarcity is possible, how do you make the best of it, and how do you kind of prosper? And it's a really beautiful illustration of like how people in challenging circumstances thrive, and that's really important, because honestly, most of humanity lives that way.
Right.
But that's not necessary. And moving into the future, as we progress towards abundance and superabundance, which is coming past abundance, the scarcity mindset is actually a little bit dangerous, because if you only think that you can do so much, but so much is just the beginning, it limits what's possible as we interact and grow together.
Well, I do a lot of sports analogies, and the best coaches are the ones that show players that they can do way better than they ever even thought themselves to be able to do. So we need more coaches like that, and that can make that happen. To me, that's like super exciting that there will be abundance and superabundance. So we got to get rid of conflicts, get rid of all this other crap, and let's just do it already, type of thing. You know, in LA we say leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So we'll probably have to do that. But I do want to ask you one more question in this part. You know, one client told me in 2021, they told me, you know, Mark, the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly. And I have so many people tell me that they think 2020 feels like it was yesterday and years ago, all at the same time. And now we're in 2024 already. The others just seem to zoom by. What are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I mean, it's not a trite answer. I'm just going to be completely, transparent and candid with you as I've been this whole discussion. I mean, I am grateful to be alive, truly. I mean, I'm 100% grateful. There's no like reason why I'm alive, but I'm completely grateful to be alive. With the pandemic having just ended, and living and breathing life sciences for my entire career for 26 years, I've seen some horrible things that befall people, and have suffered closely both with my family, my friends, colleagues as well, from awful things that from a health perspective, from a mental health perspective, that could lead towards avenues that are not positive. And I am very grateful. I wake up every day. I say the Lord's Prayer, and I'm very happy that I'm alive when I wake up every day, and I'm grateful for that.
It's good.
Uh, Hopeful. I'm hopeful about a lot of things. I want my flying car, at some point. I'm hopeful, that we'll get past the hype and of generative AI, and we'll start getting to the late majority, which will probably be in about 18 months, when most of society starts adopting AI in their personal lives, and they stop thinking that we're hyping AI, which is actually, it's probably underhyped, as Rashad Tabakawala says. It's probably underhyped, not overhyped. And I'm hopeful that when that happens, that the naysayers and the folks that are out there thinking that it's like a fad or a trend will realize that they've had like a fear of missing out, if you will, and that they should have jumped on the bandwagon a bit earlier, because it is really incredible what's possible. But I'm getting a little tired of having to tell people how incredible it is all the time. But that's not really my job, but it is part of my job. So I'm hopeful for a brighter day when we can all benefit together, and we can kind of improve what's possible in our world together. Because there are still a number of challenges in the world we live in, as you mentioned, the ongoing conflict, there's climate change challenges, there's challenges, broadly in society, and wealth inequity and the rest. And I think, if we can work together to kind of think about what's possible with the help of artificial intelligence, I think, there's really nothing we can't achieve.
Yeah, well, so I think it's a great message that we're going to talk about influencers in a minute, but we have a choice to be, positive and embrace, or negative and be scared, or negative in our mindset. And basically, it sounds like a pretty easy choice which way to go, but you have to have the mindset to do it. So, thank you for sharing all that. And truly, I knew we'd show them being a leader who cares, and we look forward to hearing a lot more from you and a lot of good things from you. So really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.